Most millionaires are not the people you see flashing Rolex watches or pulling up in brand new Lamborghinis. They're often the quiet ones, the person in line behind you at Starbucks, the neighbor who still drives an old Honda Civic, the coworker who wears the same pair of sneakers every week. They blend in. They don't need to tell you they're rich. They don't need to prove anything to anyone. And that's exactly what makes them wealthy in the first place. Here's the truth. Real wealth doesn't scream, it whispers. And if you know what to look for, you can often spot the signs. But the real value isn't just spotting others who are secretly wealthy. It's about learning how to adopt those same habits yourself. Because if you do, you won't just look rich, you'll actually be on the road to building wealth. This is the Passive Path, where we talk about money, smart choices, and creating a life where your money works harder than you do. Today we're breaking down 7 signs that reveal when someone is secretly wealthy, and I'll show you how to apply each one in your own life. Let's start with the first sign. Wealthy people avoid talking about the 3 E's: earn, expensive, and excess. For the first E, earn. You won't hear wealthy people constantly bragging about how much money they make. Why? Because when someone can't stop telling you their salary, their commissions, or how much they make in their business, it usually means they're still trying to prove something. Truly wealthy people already know they have money. They don't need external validation. The second E is expensive. They don't brag about their latest luxury purchases. On Instagram, you see people showing off Gucci belts, Louis Vuitton bags, or $1,200 sneakers. But the secretly wealthy, they don't bother. They understand that if you're constantly telling people how much your vacation cost or how much your car is worth, you're probably just trying to justify the expense. And the third E is excess. People who live in constant display of excess, whether it's giant parties, luxury cars, or dripping in designer brands, often aren't as wealthy as they appear. Real millionaires know that showing off can attract jealousy, unnecessary attention, and even financial pressure. They'd rather avoid all that. So what do instead? They stay quiet. They live comfortably, but they don't advertise it. They'd rather redirect that energy into actually building and protecting their wealth. When you think about it, that's a powerful shift. Because the more you try to look rich, the less rich you usually are. But the more you ignore appearances and focus on building assets, the wealthier you can become. That's the first sign. Now let's move on, because the next one might surprise you. If you really want to spot a secretly wealthy person, don't look at their clothes, look at their car. Wealthy people often drive cars that don't look impressive at first glance. You might expect them to pull up in a brand new Mercedes or a Lamborghini. But in reality, many of them are driving a 5 to 10-year-old Toyota, Honda, or Ford. The kind of car you'd barely notice in a parking lot. Why? Because they understand how brutal car depreciation is. The moment you drive a new car off the lot, it loses value. A $50,000 car can be worth $40,000 just a year later. That's $10,000 gone in 12 months just for the privilege of having that new car smell. Now compare that to buying a reliable used car. Something 3 to 5 years old with 30 to 50,000 miles. By then, the steepest part of depreciation is already gone. You're getting almost the same car for half the cost. Think about this. The average new car payment in the United States is over $700 a month. That's more than $8,000 a year. If you invested that money in an index fund instead, over 10 years you could easily cross $100,000. That's the difference between struggling with payments and building real wealth. I once met a business owner in Texas who was worth several $1,000,000, but when I visited him, he picked me up in a 2012 Honda Accord with a dent in the bumper. When I asked about it, he just shrugged and said, "It runs fine." Why would I want a car payment? Meanwhile, one of his employees drove a leased BMW and complained about never having money. That's the contrast. For the wealthy, a car is just transportation. It gets you from point A to point B. They'd rather have their money compounding in investments than tied up in a shiny object that loses value every day. If you want to follow the same path, start by rethinking your car choices. You don't need to buy a 10-year-old beater if that's not for you. But consider the sweet spot, a used car that's 3 to 5 years old, reliable, and already past its biggest drop in value. Saving on cars might feel small at first. But over time, it's one of the biggest differences between looking rich and becoming rich. And that leads us to the next sign. Because while wealthy people save money on cars and small purchases, they're not afraid to spend on something far more valuable. The wealthy understand something most people overlook. They know that time is the only resource you can never get back. Money can be lost and earned again, but once a day is gone, it's gone forever. That's why many wealthy people spend money on things that buy back their time. Instead of scrubbing their own bathrooms, they pay someone to clean. Instead of standing in line at Costco, they order groceries online. Instead of cooking every night, they hire a chef a few times a week. It may sound like luxury, but it's actually strategy. Every hour they save on chores is an hour they can use to grow their business, invest, or simply spend with family. Time freedom becomes their ultimate purchase. I know someone who runs a small marketing agency in Chicago. He drives an older Ford Escape, nothing flashy at all, but he pays for meal prep services and a dog walker. He told me, "I don't need a Tesla. I'd rather spend those hours working on my clients' campaigns or taking my kids to the park." That's what wealth looks like in real life. Another way the wealthy spend is on unique hobbies. Not the kind of flashy spending you see on social media. Instead, they go after rare and meaningful things. It could be collecting vintage baseball cards. It could be investing in fine art or classic guitars. It could even be funding a passion project, like restoring old cars or supporting a local theater. These aren't about showing off. They're about personal satisfaction and identity. The wealthy don't want what everyone else has. They want something that reflects their values and passions. That's why the rarest items, signed sports memorabilia, antique watches, limited edition books are so appealing to them. It's not about impressing strangers. It's about enjoying something that feels meaningful and unique. For you, this might look different. Maybe you don't need a private chef, but you could spend a little money on grocery delivery to save hours every month. Maybe you don't need to buy fine art, but you could invest in a hobby that brings joy and keeps you motivated. The point is simple. Spending money on things that save time or bring personal fulfillment is often a better move than spending to impress. And the wealthy know it. If you're serious about building wealth, ask yourself this. What's one thing you can stop buying for appearances? And what's one thing you could pay for that would give you more time or energy back? When you start making those choices, you'll begin to think and act more like someone who's truly wealthy. Next, let's talk about one of the most subtle but powerful habits of the rich. They're hyper-aware of their image, but not in the way most people think. Wealthy people know that image is powerful, but they don't use it the way you might think. They don't brag about their net worth. They don't drop the price of their watch in casual conversation. They don't make you feel small to make themselves look bigger. Instead, they downplay their success. Ask a wealthy person how much they make, and they might just say, "We're doing okay." Ask about their net worth, and they'll probably say, "We're comfortable, not the richest by any means." It's not false humility, it's awareness. They know how easily jealousy can ruin relationships. They know how quickly people can change when money enters the picture. I once heard a story about a man who was worth over $100 million. At lunch, he casually mentioned, "I'm poor compared to my friends." That wasn't a joke. His circle included billionaires. To him, his wealth wasn't something to show off. It was just normal life. That's the key here. No matter how much money you have, there will always be someone richer. So if your happiness is tied to comparing yourself to others, you'll never feel rich enough. The wealthy understand this, which is why they don't bother flaunting. They focus on security, freedom, and peace of mind. Here's what you can take away. Stop worrying about what people think you earn. Stop trying to impress with flashy purchases. Start focusing on building a life that feels secure and fulfilling to you. That's the kind of image that really matters. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Wealthy people may skip over paying for little things, but when it comes to the big, unavoidable expenses in life, they act very differently. Wealthy people are surprisingly frugal when it comes to small purchases. They don't overspend on gadgets, overpriced coffee, or unnecessary subscriptions. They know these little expenses add up, but here's the twist. When a big, important expense shows up, they don't hesitate. If the roof leaks, they'll spend $15,000 to fix it right away. If their business needs a new piece of equipment to keep running, they'll buy it without blinking, because they know the difference between wants and needs. Most people do the opposite. They'll argue with themselves for hours about buying a $20 item on Amazon. Then they'll go sign a 30-year mortgage that stretches them to the limit. They'll finance a $70,000 truck just to look successful. That's not wealth. That's stress. There's a reason Warren Buffett still lives in the same modest house he bought decades ago. He isn't interested in proving anything with marble countertops or a fleet of luxury cars. He knows those things don't build wealth. Think about the average American car payment again, $700 a month. That's more than most people spend on food. Over 10 years, it's nearly $90,000. Invested, that could grow into a retirement cushion. And yet, plenty of families will go broke just to keep up appearances in their neighborhood. They buy the bigger house, then pay for landscaping, cleaning, furniture, and endless repairs. The bills pile up, the stress grows, and suddenly the dream home feels like a trap. Here's the principle. Be frugal on the little things that don't matter long term. Be decisive and confident on the big things that actually protect your life, your health, and your future. Save on the daily coffee. But if your furnace dies in January in Canada, pay to fix it without hesitation. Every small saving is a building block for wealth. Every wise big purchase is protection for your financial foundation. The wealthy get this balance right. And there's one more skill they've mastered that most people can't handle. They know how to wait. We live in a world that rewards instant gratification. See it, want it, swipe the card. That's the cycle most people fall into. The wealthy play a different game. They master the ability to wait. They don't rush into purchases just because something looks good in the moment. They research, they think it over, and often they realize they don't even want the item after the excitement fades. There's a simple rule some wealthy people follow. If you want something big, wait 30 days before buying it. If you still want it after a month, then you know it's worth considering. Most people can't even wait 24 hours before hitting buy now. And here's the thing about sales. Most sales aren't really sales at all. A shirt marked down from $80 to $50 was probably never worth $80 in the first place. Retailers know how to play with numbers. Wealthy people understand this. They know that waiting almost always leads to a better deal. I'll give you an example. A family in Michigan needed new appliances for their kitchen. They wanted to buy them in the spring but decided to wait until Black Friday. When November came, they bought the exact same refrigerator and stove for nearly 40% less. That patience saved them thousands of dollars. And patience doesn't just apply to shopping. Wealthy people are patient with investments too. They don't chase meme stocks because of hype. They buy quality assets and let time do the heavy lifting. It's the same principle as the marshmallow experiment you might have heard of. Kids who can wait for 2 marshmallows instead of eating one right away usually grow up to handle money better. Every time you delay gratification, you build discipline. And discipline is what creates wealth over decades. Now here's where it all comes together. The biggest and clearest sign that someone is truly wealthy is not their car. It's not their watch. It's not even their patience with spending. İteyordur, easy, the fishet. VC, wealthy people almost always live below their means. Not just with cars or clothes, but with their homes. They don't rush to buy the biggest house they can get approved for. They don't stretch every dollar just to qualify for a massive mortgage. Many of them live in homes that seem modest for their income level. Sometimes they even own their house outright, mortgage-free. From the outside, you'd never guess how much wealth they've quietly built. Think about Warren Buffett, one of the richest men in the world. He still lives in the same house in Omaha that he bought back in 1958. It cost him just over $30,000. He could buy any mansion in America, but he doesn't. Why? Because he doesn't need to. His wealth isn't about showing off. It's about freedom and peace of mind. Now compare that to lottery winners in the US. Many of them go bankrupt within a decade. Why? They buy giant mansions they can't afford to maintain. They hire staff, landscapers, and pool cleaners. The property taxes alone are crushing. The big house becomes a financial prison instead of a blessing. Here's something practical for your own life. Don't think of a home as a trophy. Think of it as a tool. A smaller home means lower mortgage payments, lower property taxes, lower insurance, lower maintenance costs, and less pressure to keep up appearances with your neighbors. I know a man in Toronto who made millions investing in real estate, yet he still lives in a simple 3-bedroom bungalow. He could upgrade to a luxury condo downtown tomorrow, but he chooses not to. He told me, "I like having no debt and no stress. That's real wealth." When you step back, you start to see the bigger picture. Wealth is not about what you show the world. It's about the freedom you quietly keep for yourself. It's about making choices that protect your future instead of feeding your ego. All of these signs point to one truth. The richest people don't always look rich. They value freedom, time, and peace of mind far more than flash and attention. And that's what the passive path is all about. Building real wealth that lets you live life on your terms. If you've been following along, you now know the 7 signs of someone who's secretly wealthy. You've seen how they avoid the 3 E's, how they drive older cars, how they spend on time instead of things, how they control their image, how they stay frugal on small stuff but decisive on big expenses, how they master patience, and how they live in homes below their means. Now it's your turn. Start adopting one of these habits today. Pick the one that feels most doable for you. Maybe it's cutting one small unnecessary expense. Maybe it's holding off on your next big purchase for a month. Maybe it's realizing you don't need a bigger house to feel successful. Every small decision you make adds up. Every dollar you save and invest is a seed planted for your future. And every hour you buy back for yourself is a step closer to freedom. Wealth is not about looking rich. Wealth is about building a life where money works for you. It's about peace of mind. It's about options. It's about freedom. If you want more content like this, hit like and subscribe to The Passive Path. Leave a comment and share this video with someone you care about. I'll see you in the next video.